Hello, dear viewers and subscribers of the Gulag channel Know. I'm with you, Vladimir Shichikov. Today is the 7th of May, 2025 year. We are continuing our large independent investigation into mass violations of prisoners' rights in Russia. A few days ago, Vladimir Shichikov turned to the Gulag on the fact of the death, in fact the murder of his son Andrei, in the institution of the Kufsin of Russia in the Kaliningrad region. Andrei was killed on March 27, 2025 year. More precisely, biological death occurred on this day. Andrei's lawyer has repeatedly filed complaints and statements on the fact of beating and violence against Andrei in the pretrial detention center number 2 of the Federal Penitentiary Service in the Kaliningrad region. Andrei's father Vladimir Shichikov is in touch with us today. Vladimir, I welcome you to the Gulag channel. No. First of all, of course, on behalf of our team, I express my sincere words of sympathy and condolences to you in connection with this loss and this tragedy. And I think it's necessary to help you make it public so that you tell us what really happened. And I hope that this will attract the attention of society, prosecutors, and investigators. And as a result, a criminal case will be opened on the fact of torture that led to the death of your son. Hello, Vladimir. Then I give you the floor. Please tell us what happened to Andrei and in general, how he got to Russia, to the Kaliningrad region, a little background. Hello, Vladimir. Greetings, dear brothers and sisters. My name is Vladimir Shichikov. I myself turned to Vladimir Shichikov with exactly the problem that happened in our family. My son ended up in the Kaliningrad region because we wanted him to be closer to us. In other words, we are Siberians from Omsk. Here he has 4 children, a wife. We wanted him to be closer to us. We could come to him by car. For this reason, they bought a house, and he moved to the Kaliningrad region, Ozersk. There is such a village, Bagration is nearby there. So he moved there, began to settle down there, in general, as everything is supposed to be in the house and so on. We naturally participated in this life and constantly helped him. Every day we called up with him, and so he is, in general, we are the same. The story is that one day, this is the 22nd of February, 2024 year. He and his friends, whom he helped in some difficult situation, they came to thank him and brought him fish. They caught fish somewhere and brought it back. They marked the 23rd of February in advance, and they asked him to take them home. It is located nearby, somewhere there with Ozersk. Here, but we must admit honestly, they were all drunk. My son got behind the wheel, and they drove. The reason why they drove off the road is still unclear today. Because the court didn't do it. That's very biased. That is, his steering rod, who understands, has burst. That's what happened because they hit a tree, or they flew off because the traction was torn, broke. The court did not establish this. But my son immediately admitted that, yes, he was drunk, in fact, he violated the law in this sense. Here are the claims from those guys who were, they immediately wrote in writing, we have no complaints against our comrade. It's their own fault, they asked for it, and so on. What all the documents are about, everything is written there in the file. The investigator who came to him explained to him that he needed materials to work out, so you sign it. He immediately admitted everything. There are no problems, he says. Yes, I am guilty, as they say. I will bear a deserving punishment. Here, that is, there are no problems. And then everything went quiet. I visited him on New Year's Eve this year and was interested in this question. Here. And he explained that there is nothing, no one touches me, there are no problems. February 25th, 2025 year, that is, a year after what happened. So he had a summons, he was handed over, he signed that he had to come to court. He called us, we have this record, a text message, he says, send me money, this is the most please. He says I'll call a taxi and go to the court. I'm being called to court. We have sent everything. And his wife tells me that he did not have time to get to the court. The bailiffs arrived. They took him away. That is, he explained to them, I'm going to the trial. Why do I need a car, as it were? No, come with us. He was brought to court. There was Judge Marashka, who explained to him that he does not respect the court, and for this reason she makes a decision. So it means to apply a preventive measure into custody. That is, to close him in the pretrial detention center number 2 of the city of Cheremkovsk. What the goal was, I generally understand now, but then of course there was surprise. Why should it be closed? He lives near the court, quite close. He can't hide anywhere, and he has nothing to hide behind. The article doesn't say anything there. He confessed everything. He understands that, yes, he was wrong, that he got behind the wheel in the wrong way. Moreover, a year ago, he went to court quite calmly. However, the prosecutor insisted on this, and Judge Marashka confirmed, yes, there is such a need. On the very first day when he was brought in, according to him, he had a conflict with the SIN staff about the fact that he was an Orthodox person. Here is a churchly person. Here. And we gave him a cross with Georgia, brought by his wife. They wanted to take this cross from him. I do not know what rules there are that it is necessary to take away the cross. In general, he was beaten for it. And in general, the acceptance was the most severe, as he says. That is, they just beat me up, and that's it. Only now he's just arrived there. And when he was brought to court, I don't want to deceive exactly, it seems that the 6th number was, but it can be clarified. It means that they brought him to the first hearing, he was already beaten up, and told the lawyer, I am being beaten. I am being tortured there. They don't demand anything from me, they just cripple me, and that's it. The beatings were visible on his face. He couldn't sit properly anymore, and he couldn't stand anymore. As the lawyer explained to me, the conditions in the pretrial detention center in Chernyakhovsk are the same as in the punishment cell. That is, you need to stand there for at least 16 hours a day. 8 hours you can rest, 16 you have to stand. My son underwent spinal surgery, what was said. And he tried to tell them there. They just mocked her, laughed at her. Show the certificate here, and take the certificate out of your pocket. Where will he get a certificate in the pretrial detention center? It's just a mockery. Here. And if not, you have to stand at 16 o'clock. If you leaned against the wall, or you sat down, or, God forbid, you lay down, these executioners come in. Start beating, just maiming. They turned to a lawyer and immediately called me. I didn't expect that such a situation could happen. Yes, it may be closed. Well, I say, I wasn't ready for this situation. I say, what's going on? He says it is necessary, he says, to appeal to the prosecutor's office with a complaint. I say, are you sure it won't hurt him? He says, I do not know, but I hope not, because it is necessary. He's already being beaten up. My son has agreed, says, no, I will testify that I am being tortured and killed here. Here. Moreover, the beatings were visible on the face. The judge saw it. The prosecutor saw what condition he was in. They wrote a complaint. They responded to it quickly enough, but for some reason, they immediately transferred him to another cell, as soon as they found out that a complaint had been written. After that, the lawyer came to him, he says, they beat me even more, I can't stand it anymore, he says what to do. So they turn to me, I say, listen, well, you are achieving something. First of all, I am far away. If I come, I understand that the detention center will not let me in. And I understand this system perfectly. That is, they are just executioners, for whom the concept of honor, conscience, morality, dignity is masculine. The SIN do not have this. A completely different system that has been created. This pipeline is for killing, for torture. And it started with the fact that my lawyer called me and said, an ambulance was called to the pretrial detention center. That's when I got really scared. A pretrial detention center, an ambulance for some frivolous reasons are not called. So he is already in a serious condition. But since he has preventive measures in custody, they cannot take him to the hospital in the city or somewhere and provide him with normal medical care. The lawyer appealed again, and I say, pursue, because they refuse. We asked at the first meeting that we change my promise, because what's the point of keeping it there? What are you keeping him there for? Especially if you see that he is being tortured. No, it should be there. We see no reason for you to. He can escape. Yes, he can run away from 4 children. His kids are small. Their lifestyle is connected only with children, and there are a lot of children to raise. No, they kept beating him up. They gave him help, gave him some injections and left. Now I understand that then they had a choice, but they need to get rid of it. He was transported to the hospital. I don't know what car, how they took him there, that he was already beaten up completely. Here he was transported by IKate to Kaliningrad. There is a prison hospital there. From there came a paper that came from a doctor. It is in the file. I think Vladimir Ivanovich sent it here. He prescribes there all the diseases that he had instantly. He had broken lungs, his liver didn't work, his kidneys didn't work, he had wallpaper on his head. I buried him with my own hands there on his head. There is no clean place. There, thanks to the guys who buried him, prepared for the funeral. This is a funeral home. And they tried to do everything so that my mother wouldn't go crazy, my wife. They have already called an ambulance from this hospital. He was brought to Kaliningrad to the emergency hospital. They examined him, said that he did not need to be operated on. That is, as the doctors explained to me later, my friends, to whom I sent all these documents, all the tests and the like. There was nothing left to operate on him there already. For some reason, he was transferred to an infectious diseases hospital. And then we barely achieved it. And that's when I was able to call him at the infectious diseases hospital. He also took the phone and spoke in his hand. The only thing that my son's last words, he says, "Dad, I was killed. I do not know if it is possible to say Vladimir literally or not. Completely. Of course, you can literally." He says, "Dad, the Fedor's garbage killed me." Says, "Dad, for what?" His phone was snatched from him. Says, "My phone is being taken away at the hospital. I do not know. His phone was taken away." I say, I managed to tell him. My son says, "Wait, stop. Garbage, I keep saying this, it's all later. Let's take care of you now, about your life. We have already left, my wife and I have already left. And there, we just thought that my wife would fly out by plane. I would drive up later by car. So we'll call him in the morning. In the morning, we call the hospital. They tell us, well, you can't talk to him. We put him in an artificial coma. And he is now under a ventilator. We say, why is there such a need? He says, well, because that's how doctors explain it. As far as I understood and learned from the doctor, I have a very good candidate of medical sciences, he says. They would not have done this without a reason. In other words, it means that there was already a completely critical situation, he says. He was introduced. Naturally, we went there, but we were informed by phone that on the 27th of March, at 9 hours and 20 minutes, my son died. This guy is healthy, who went to court, who has 4 children, who has never had anything to do with criminal life. He does not know anything about it. He has never communicated there. He has a completely different lifestyle. From there, his body was given to me. I buried him with these hands. There was no living place on the body. How was it necessary to kill him? And most importantly, for what? Just to beat him to death, and that's it. I say once again, I am grateful to those guys who... His body was painted over there, everything was done there, and so on. You see, I examined the body myself. Yes, of course, he wasn't completely undressed, no, but I needed it. Secondly, my wife had to, when his funeral service was held, what she would see. If they hadn't painted it all over, it would have been even scarier, because my wife is in such a state right now. I'm giving this interview because it's been 40 days. I am a believer, and I understand that for the first 40 days, he does not need to be disturbed there. He has his own worries. Well, now it's over. I am giving this interview for one simple purpose. The killing of our children must stop. Someone needs to hear it and do it. If we have power in the Russian Federation, then we must apply the laws. And the fact that they give me unsubscriptions, that he died of natural death with compression of the brain, who squeezed his brain. He was beaten to death. How? Now I'm going to ask if that's who's going to watch. See my interview here. Dear Russians, if your children can get into a pretrial detention center, knock on all the bells in advance, then it will be too late. We didn't have time, you know, I couldn't imagine that he would fall into this torture conveyor. He would simply be beaten to death. Why was he killed? Now there are 4 small children. Let these executioners look into the eyes of these 3 years old, 8 years old, and Ilya 13. They took my father. For what? For what? If I may. Yes, Vladimir, if I may, yes, I just wanted the facts. We really studied the documents that Vladimir forwarded to us. It contains, among other things, a complaint from a lawyer, registered on March 19, 2025 year. In other words, less than 2 weeks before the onset of biological death. The lawyer rang the bells. The lawyer appealed to the prosecutors, asked to conduct a check on the fact of the beating. He described in his complaint that during the visit he saw Andrei Shichikov in a depressed state with traces of violence, bruises, abrasions, and so on, which confirmed what the father of the murdered Vladimir Shichikov was just telling about. Therefore, in this case, to say that there was some complete inaction, of course, the family did everything possible to provide legal assistance from the point of view of the legal field. The lawyer visited, all this was recorded. But the fact is that the system, obviously, in the Kaliningrad region, it worked to conceal crimes that were committed by unscrupulous officials of the Federal Penitentiary Service for the Kaliningrad region, including employees of SIZO-2. Therefore, in this case, of course, on the one hand, let's hope that the publicity of these facts and these documents will lead to the fact that a criminal case will be initiated on the fact of torture. But at the same time, of course, it is necessary to conduct an independent investigation in parallel, with the help of human rights defenders, joining forces with lawyers, with the family of the murdered Andrei Shichikov. And yes, I know that this video will definitely be watched by employees of the Federal Penitentiary Service in the Kaliningrad region. I hope that not everyone there is a fascist, and there will be a daredevil or several daredevils, who will at least be able to contact us anonymously or in person in order to explain what really happened, and help us establish the names, surnames, patronymics, titles, and positions of those sadists in uniform, who killed and created these torture conditions for Andrei Shichikov in SIZO-2, and in the future to conceal these crimes in this system. Therefore, if someone who is watching us now, from the Federal Penitentiary Service in the Kaliningrad region, has data about this emergency, there is no gulag with 2 T's at the end, thedogmail.com. Write to us 24/7 at any time convenient to you. Keep, of course, certain security measures, anonymity. And if you have data, facts, photos, or videos about this, you can, of course, forward it to us. Next question. Vladimir, at the moment, the Federal Penitentiary Service for the Kaliningrad region has provided video recordings from CCTV cameras SIZO-2 to you and the lawyer and the inspectors, who, for example, would prove that there were no violations on their part. Because video registration is going on in the pretrial detention center number 2, a video surveillance system is installed and so on. Have any videos been transmitted to you or, on the contrary, do they hide these files and facts? Well, the SIN employees did not communicate with me in any way at all. And what's more, my lawyer, in general, I wanted to meet with Judge Murashka, who starts with her, she made this decision, yes. Or there's a prosecutor here, Potapov, there is no communication with me, in general, from any law enforcement agencies or any legislative organizations, so let's say no one contacted me, did not communicate. But just the opposite is true. That is, everyone left. Someone went on vacation. Let's say the doctors. On the 27th, my son died. On the 28th, we called and there was no one, no doctor, no one. This is a nurse, a senior nurse. We asked, well, someone was there. Everyone went on vacation. Everyone is on vacation. There is no one. I understood that all this would be hidden. So now there was a request to give out all the medical data there. When my son was admitted and he died, that is, the causes of death were from the hospital. And we only have a death certificate. Here, the hospital said we won't give you anything. You will sue us, so if you want, let the court demand it from us. Here in the hospital, at least that's what they answered. And in the morgue, where the son was opened, you understand that there is a death certificate. There is a death certificate. But there is an autopsy protocol. As far as I know, it is legally issued in 2 weeks. You can make a request, and it should be issued within 2 weeks. For some reason, they explained to us that they have different laws. You can request it in a month, and in another month, within a month. They must issue it. Here, they haven't given out anything yet, because they were approached, so they gave out, and they gave an answer to the wrong address. So we took it, but it turns out to be the wrong address. We turned to house 90 there, but we had to go to 90A. We need to go back to Kaliningrad here to apply. I do not know whether this is a counteraction to all of this or not. The situation is like this. In other words, it is the autopsy protocol that is needed. 2 questions, Vladimir. At the moment, do I understand correctly that you have officially submitted an application to the Investigative Committee of Russia at the place in the Kaliningrad region to initiate a criminal case under Part 5 of Article 286 of the Criminal Code, on the fact of abuse of official authority with the use of torture, which resulted in the death of the victim? Yes, we filed before my son's funeral. We arrived in Chernyakhovsk, went to the investigative committee, and in general they were waiting for us there. The lawyer had already called that we would come. I specifically said that I came to file a statement about the murder of my son by torture and bullying. So, well, I'll tell you so, they treated me perfectly normally. They said, yes, we will write everything down. We will give everything. Here, of course, I probably won't, and I don't even know the last names. They are written down, but I'm not needed. That's not the question. The question is that, let's say, in a private conversation in the corridor, they explained to me that most likely there will be a certificate that death is natural. He says, this was explained to me in the investigative committee. He says, this is practice. Complaints from the pretrial detention center and Chernyakov as the investigative committee are constantly received. That is, they are simply there all the time. You know, this is also the conveyor of these here. When people can't stand it anymore and understand that they will be hammered, they write. Yes, there are just standard unsubscribes that are unsubscribed. Yes, they interviewed me. I have such a reply. I sent it to you. We interviewed everyone, everything. Nothing was confirmed. There is nothing on the cameras. And he says, since there will be a certificate, most likely, that he has a natural death, then it makes no sense to initiate a criminal case. It may be excited. We must understand this. He says, well, we'll tell you everything. All this was said informally. And in general, I will tell you the situation itself, which is with whom I communicated in Chernyakhovsk. In Ozersk I communicated. With people I communicated with the official police, not with the official police. There's just fear in the eyes. As soon as I tell my situation, they explain it to me very simply. That's why I don't want to name them, why they, as they say, I will ask them unnecessary questions. We are afraid, and we have to live here, do you understand? They can also come to us. They can also ask us all kinds of questions. When they came to mine, this is the widow, the wife of my son, the murdered Andrei, they said, we need to close the criminal case. And if you do not give consent, then the problems can be serious. She's there alone. Right now my wife is going there to support and be close to her. How can you come to a girl whose husband has just been killed, she has 4 children in her arms, and say we can put pressure on you? Yes, she will at least sign something to you in such a situation. I mean, well, I don't know. It's not that lawlessness, it's just some kind of horror. You see, this is it. I'm sorry, I am. I don't have any decent words that can be said on the air. In other words, it has to stop sometime. Someone has to pay attention if our children are being killed. I repeat again, my son had nothing to do with it. And even if he was related to crime, What right do they have to use torture? And it's not the first day. At least 25 years of torture go. The sin have practically legalized them. Sin. If you can, Vladimir. Please tell me, yes, I just know that you know firsthand what a prison is. You have spent many years serving in prison, but not in Russia, but in Belgium. If you can give a little background, because at first you said that you were Siberians, but at the same time, your son moved to Kaliningrad closer. Those people who see you here on the channel for the first time do not know the family history. I understand correctly that at the beginning of the noughties, your family with all the children left for Europe, where you live. And Andrei has just returned to Russia, the only one of your children who returned to Russia, because he thought he could build a happy, good life there. They created a family there, children were born, and as a result, right now that part of the family that you have lives in Russia is now de facto, not only all of it, but all of you all together are faced with this absolutely inhumane system. Yes, in the noughties. In general, these are my eldest children, I have 3 sons. So they wanted to, young, everything is interesting to them, he says, here we want to go to Europe. I haven't been to Europe either, so let's go. So when they arrived here, they definitely said we're going to live here. I'm a threesome. Then my wife and her son arrived, and it so happened that my older children, they now live in France, so. And we ended up in Brussels, so they requested documents. So 6 years later, we received these documents and began to live here. Yes, we have been living in Belgium for a long time. So I just want to say right away that I am giving this interview personally, on my own behalf, as the father of a murdered son. Therefore, my activity, which I have been doing and am doing now, is my lifestyle. Yes, it has nothing to do with this interview. That is, it is connected only with the murder of my son. This is my personal wish. Here. And so I am a clergyman of the Russian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate, a minister. I am the Holy Deacon Vladimir. Here. And with the blessing of our Lord, I appeared at a certain time. In Dutch it is called almaziener, that is, a prison clergyman. The one who walks feeds the sitters, of course, mostly Orthodox. That's why I know what the content of the prison is here. But if someone would be interested, I would never compare. There's just nothing to compare. There's just nothing to compare. In other words, it is impossible to compare the conditions in which the prisoners are here and in Russia. Yes, this is also a prison. Yes, people are deprived of the opportunity to be free only by the decision of the commission and so on. They are sometimes released and there is a vacation and so on. But for all the time how much? And now I visit prisons, because many inmates have very long terms, and are used to communicating with me, so I come. The prison administration always meets me halfway, I can always come in here. I have never heard from a single person who is already serving time in the Kingdom of Belgium in prison, let alone about violence, but about speaking rudely to them. Therefore, I say again, it is impossible to compare. But I can compare. I must honestly admit, in the 99th year, I myself was in a pretrial detention center in the city of Omsk. And you know, in the 99th year, when I got to the pretrial detention center, I know who was there, Vladimir Ivanovich. Everyone went through it. Yes, that is, the first day is hard there, and so on, everything is there a lot. But there was no pipeline of torture. When we went there, we were not beaten with batons. Maybe someone who was in the 99th year in prison. Vike, there are 6 or 7 that are now the hardest conditions created there. Yes, it's easy for me. Well, I grew up in Omsk in the 90s. I know a lot of guys, some of them were in prison. And they were in these colonies, they came out. But there were no such complaints that there were precisely conversion tortures. That is, they torture and mock, rape. And this is the basis for them, what to rape, mock. But I wasn't told that. When I was there myself, well, yes, we had too much in the cell, so to speak. There's a cell designed for 32 people. There were 54 of us. Here's someone who lived on a palm tree, someone someone who was in prison, he knows what it is. But so that they would fly up to us and just beat us up, or take us to the length and beat us there. Well, there was no such thing. Do you understand? And after all, I talked to the guys who are not in prison for the first time. I mean, I talked to them too, these torture huts, this is all there is. Yes, there is somewhere, there is, but what would it be, a conveyor? That is, for all the time I was there, I was not hit once. Well, what they shouted, there is always shouting, but they didn't put anyone on the stretch. There wasn't. Well, what can I say? But it wasn't. I do not know what I am hearing right now. What is happening in the pre-trial detention centers? The Gestapo is just resting there. You see, they've learned to kill in such a way that they won't leave any traces. But I buried my son with my own hands. There is no living place there. That is, why was he beaten like that? What did they want from him? Why is this done? After all, there are these characters, the so-called people, for whom this is a job. I say again, honor, conscience, morality, human dignity. It is absent from this institution, if you can call it that. Vladimir, a short question. Has anyone from the penal enforcement system, the Federal Penitentiary Service, or the Federal Penitentiary Service in the Kaliningrad region contacted the widow or you? Or did anyone express condolences to the parents in a human way? Not humanly. The only thing that was warned in the house, she doesn't understand my uniform. I mean, who was it? In other words, they were bailiffs, they were SIN officers, they were policemen. Well, the police now, the policeman, she doesn't know. Here, but people in uniform, and just said that you see yourself neatly, and everything will be fine. Because she herself is a widow, she has a difficult fate, she grew up in an orphanage, she knows what it is. And she wishes happiness to her children, joy. Here, and in this situation, picking up children is not a big problem for this system. Do you understand? That is, to write something or how to take away children. She naturally shakes, is afraid, and that's it. We are now doing everything to ensure that they are close to us. My son was taken away from me. I want to. There is no father, but there is a grandfather. Thank God, I'm not going to die one of these days, and I want to give the rest of my life to my granddaughters, my grandson. So, to replace the father. Disassembled. Here. Has anyone contacted you? Yes, to be honest, I would not really want to communicate with these executioners, but what should I talk about with them? They tell me the subtleties of how they killed, and apologies. Well, apologies. They can leave themselves somewhere there. Let them put the bins. Therefore, Vladimir, no one contacted me. Yes, Vladimir, I wanted to tell you once again that I see how deeply you are worried. And I, as a father of children, certainly empathize with you. Do I understand correctly that Andrei returned to Russia because he believed that he could build a happy, normal life there? Well, let's be honest, no, that was not the situation. It's just that he was young, he was looking for his mate, and here, well, it didn't work out so well with him with the girls, with the locals. Well, as they say, well, so he grew up in our yard in Siberia. After all, he already has his own habits, skills. Yes, communication habits. Here. And I didn't find my soulmate here, I didn't find it. But talking on the phone there, yes, via WhatsApp and Skype there when I was there, here. So he talked with his friends, with everyone. They say, well, what are you, Andruka? Well, come to us, everything is here. Here are the girls and everything is there. So he came there with one goal, to get married, to start a family. Well, about the fact that he wanted to live in Russia and create there, no. It so happened that when, in general, first of all, the children were small, that is, the wife was pregnant. Yes, they were still living there. It was technically difficult to move. So, and then he came here to us, worked here, earned money, and the pandemic began. There are also problems with this pandemic. After the pandemic, the war in Ukraine began. It is also impossible. And so he got into this whirlpool, which is why we moved him to Kaliningrad, since we can safely drive. But he had one goal. He wanted to come here, to us, to the brothers. And he did not associate the rest of his life with life in Russia. No, I just don't want to cheat. It was as it was. Yes. No, I was just really trying to understand the motivation, because the whole family is in Europe. He's moving there, and, well, in general, yes, that's how the circumstances turned out. So he fell in love with this girl, and I say, here he fell in love with a girl, and here they created a family, and thank God. Everything was fine if these characters hadn't killed him. Vladimir, on my own behalf, in addition to condolences and words of sympathy, I want to say that our team will try to do everything possible to support you in this attempt, in this mission, to achieve justice and punish those responsible. And, of course, the correction of the whole situation, so that people stop dying in agony and torture, in the dungeons of this terrible gulag of the 21st century. You have a lot of strength in your family, because really now you will have to be not only a good grandfather, but also actually replace the father with a good father to your grandchildren. My words of support to you, your wife, Andrey's widow, and I hope that everything will turn out well for the children. But in terms of the situation with the initiation of criminal proceedings against sadists and with our independent investigation, we will make efforts and cooperate. I hope this is not your last video. Our interview for the Gulag channel is not. I am sure that this case needs human rights, journalistic and public, civil, including international control. Best wishes to you, as far as possible, of course. And yes, let's stay in touch. Thank you for your testimony, for your sincere story. Once again, my words of support to you and your family. God bless you. Vladimir, thank you very much for your participation. So I believe that the Lord will manage everything, do everything, everything should be fine. It can't be bad all the time. Do you understand? It will not sacrifice evil. No. The Lord will manage everything anyway. I'm sorry if something is wrong.